Alright, so Thor the Dark World. It's obviously the second Thor film. After the Avengers, we had Iron Man 3, which was, personally, I thought it was really cool. Not just because it took place after the Avengers, but for, the fact that it was a good Iron Man movie. A lot of people hated the second one. And then the third one kind of went back to the basics. It was just a really good story. It had a lot of, emotional depth to it, and it was just really cool. And plus, it had Extremis, which is just always awesome when they do the Extremis arc in Iron Man. But this is the second film we've gotten after the Avengers, and this one doesn't really tie in nearly as much to the Avengers. Like in Iron Man, it was about Tony basically like kind of losing his mind because of what happened, and he like went through a portal to space and like tossed a nuke out there, and he was kind of losing it. But in this, it's like Thor is known across the planet, but that's really about it. It's like, oh, hey, you're Thor. You're really famous for what you did in New York, and that's about the only reference to the Avengers they really have. There is no huge tie-in. It's really its own standalone thing, and so was Iron Man. It just referenced a lot to the movie because it was important to the Iron Man movie. But this was Thor's own adventure once again, and just like the first Thor movie, it was really good. It wasn't, obviously it wasn't the same story where in the first one Thor is basically human again. He's strong, he's super strong and stuff still, but he can't hold Mjolnir because he's basically just at the peak of his cockiness, and he's kind of a douche. So he has to go through learning how to be worthy of Mjolnir and how to really become Thor again. And that was a really good story. And now we have him as a older, wiser character. And there are certain things in the film that kind of show this, but in this he is Thor, and things are fairly simple. And then you know Jane, who is doing her scientist thing, ends up basically like disappearing into a portal because there's a certain basically like equinox that's happening, and that makes certain places on the planet just crazy, and it can send you to this planet or that planet or wherever across the nine realms. And when she disappears, that's kind of how things really pick up, because Thor freaks out that suddenly she can't be seen even by the Watcher, or at least I believe that was his name. And so he goes off to see her, and then it's like boom, the whole story kind of picks up from there, where he's actually involved in what's going on. And the Dark Elves come back, and it was just a really good movie overall. A lot of great twists. Like, my favorite part about the film was what they did with Loki. Of course, I think obviously I don't want to say it's everyone's favorite, but I like to think it is. For one, everyone loves Thor in those movies because they're written well. The lines and stuff, the character, he's written well, and he's also acted very well. And it's just it's a good combination of actor and character, and actor and writing. And of course I can't think of his name right now. I want to say it's I'm thinking Benedict Cumberbatch, but I know that's not him. That's a different guy. But Tom Hiddleston, there it is. He's just a really good actor, and he plays the role very well. And in this movie, what they did with Loki is just great. And of course it leads to the next Thor film, which I don't know if that's supposed to come out before like Avengers 2 or not, but I assume it would, because he kind of have to have his plan kind of go off before the Avengers plan. Otherwise he'd have to just kind of like they'd have to have such a huge connection between the second Avengers and the third Thor movie, which I guess since they did it with Iron Man, they could do it with the third Thor movie if they did it after, where Loki is the whole time he's kind of working behind the scenes doing his plan, and then that comes out at the end of the Avengers movie and leads to Thor 3 or whatever. But I kind of want to see that before I want to see the Avengers, because Loki's just a great character, and he did something to the Allfather. Like, he's just gone somewhere, and the end of the movie was just like, it was just perfect. It was like you think everything's fine, and then Thor walks away, and then basically Loki pretty much gets rid of the fake image, and it's him sitting on the throne. And it's just a great way to end the movie, and it was really good because it's like, what is he planning? His mom died in this movie. He hates Thor pretty much. He hates his dad, and all he wanted to do was rule. And something he says at the end, which does make perfect sense. Even though he's kind of talking about himself and Thor. When he's as the All Father, he says, I had a son, one son who wants the throne too much, which is of course Loki, and excuse me, another son who doesn't want it at all, and that was obviously Thor. And of course, the problem with that is that Thor, who doesn't want it, is the one who's worthy of having it, and also it's his birthright because of course Loki isn't actually an Asgardian. But it was just really good. It was a great line, even though it was Loki saying it. But maybe that was just because he finally realized it. Like, maybe I wanted it like so bad, even though it didn't belong to me. And that kind of came from this movie where he says to his dad, like, it's my birthright, and he says, your birthright was to like die in a frozen wasteland, but I basically saved your life. But I loved everything about Loki in this movie. And my favorite part was when we get to see him when after his mom dies, and Thor goes to break him out. And this was my favorite part for multiple reasons, and this is actually one of the scenes that show that Thor has grown up. And I wouldn't have noticed it if I hadn't seen Avengers like just before, because it was randomly on TV. But he goes in, and Loki's being Loki, like, are you coming to glow with this and that? And Thor recognizes the fact that he's putting up one of his images, and he's faking just to be Loki and mess with him. And it reminded me of the scene in the Avengers where Loki is basically walking out of like the glass prison thing, and Thor jumps in, and then it's a fake Loki, and he's like, will you ever not fall for that? And so it was cool to see that. And like I said, I wouldn't have thought of that at all if I hadn't seen the Avengers like just recently again. But he recognized, like, I can tell you're faking it. And so it was cool to see that he could see through Loki's tricks, because normally he can't. And he's grown a little bit as a character, and so he was able to get it. And then after that, we see what really happened with Loki, and his hair is all jacked up, and he has like there's scratches on the wall. He's destroyed everything because the only person he really did love was his mother, because she was the only one who seemed to really care. And another scene I enjoyed was, of course, when he had his mother there, and he was like, one of his illusions, and it seemed like her, and he's having a conversation and stuff. And I don't know if that worked, like she was saying stuff that his mom would say, or if it was like, when you see in shows where it's like someone's kind of crazy and they see someone else, and it's like it's really just your subconscious. I don't know if it worked that way or not, but he was talking to her, and then she said, I'm not actually your mother then, and he kind of froze. So I don't think it was really his subconscious, or maybe it was, and he kind of just, it kind of clicked. Like, maybe she doesn't have to be my blood mother for me to actually love her, just like, the Allfather doesn't have to be my actual dad for me to hate him. But I can't hate him just because he's not my dad, because I love her even though she's not my mom. So it's just a really good sort of arc for Loki in the whole movie. And him dying and stuff, which obviously turned out to be fake. I knew he would have to come back, but I thought he would die. It was like the grenade part that they had. I figured, okay, if he dies here, he'll come back in some way. And then the demon thing like stabbed him, like it picked him up and stabbed him with the sword that was sticking through it. So I thought, no, he's actually dead in this, because I don't see how he could have possibly fake that, because it's just like he couldn't fake that this thing was real the whole time, because none of the illusions he creates can touch anything. So it's like it couldn't have been a fake him, because it couldn't have touched him. And that's the only thing that's in my head, like, how did he do that exactly? But even without going into like over the top detail, I did enjoy it, and it was a cool little twist where he came back to life, and he ended, basically the movie ended with him on the throne. So we'll have to see what the heck he has planned next for Asgard and Thor himself, of course. But to get to Thor again as the main character, of course, because obviously I've spent a lot of time on Loki, because that was just my favorite part about it, where all the twists and turns with him. This movie had just great emotion from all the characters, not just Loki. But Thor, he was basically working to kind of be with Jane, and they have like an extra credit scene, which I won't spoil if you haven't seen it by now. I still won't. But it kind of ties into what Jane talks about with her assistant, where Thor kind of left after the first movie and pretty much never came back to see her, even though he said he would. Even though he went through the Avengers and stuff, he had just never come back to see her. And he mentions how he's fairly busy and stuff like that. And I guess I might as well spoil that scene because I spoiled like all the stuff with Loki. But in the special after credit scene, he does come back and he basically like all they do is just like kiss and that's really it. But he came back and it wasn't because oh she disappeared, she might be in danger. He came back because he said he would, and so he came back, and it didn't take him 2 years to do it. But he had growth. He obviously they had a lot more of the love between them because they obviously established that in the first film, so they went through that in this one, and them being closer and not pretty much going like all the way and just being together because human Asgardian is fairly difficult. But he did kind of leave off in the end of the movie, and he's with her, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out through Thor 3 and even the Avengers, like I said, if that comes first. But it was cool to see him kind of go through that development as a character. He went through, they defeated the Dark Elves. He made his decision because he had to in this movie, actually, because he was getting the throne, and he was like, as the person who would take over, I have to take charge for myself and my own life first. And I have to say, as much as I would love to be king, I want to be with her because I love her, so I want to basically protect Earth and be with her. So it was a cool development of him kind of going back to loving this person and realizing she's really important to me, and I can't just say that and then like disappear for 2 years and only come back when she's about to die. So it was like a small development that you wouldn't really get except for once you really think about it. But it was a good development overall, and of course just the action in the film itself was just amazing. Like the end fight was really cool, and they're flying all over the place, different dimensions, and well, not dimensions but technically different realms, which I guess count, I don't know. But it was just a cool fight. The beginning action scene where really all he does is just beat up like 5 people and then blow up the rock guy, and that's it. But all the action was really good. It was just simple, and as usual, all the CG in those movies, it's not too over the top. It's like it just fits perfectly. And then they had like the ships that came in when they were fighting against, destroying Asgard, which all I thought was Star Wars, honestly. It was just like they just looked like Boba Fett ship a little bit, and not obviously not really the design, just how they would fly, and they were kind of vertical. It just made me think of Star Wars, and they're just flying around and looked like they flew into a Jedi temple, and everything was just like looks like Star Wars. And my dad even said, he was like, it looks like they flew into like a Jedi temple, and it was funny because I was like, that's exactly what I was thinking. But if you don't really love Star Wars, that's probably not a big deal. But overall, I did love this movie. I thought it was great. Like I said, favorite stuff was without a doubt Loki. Like in the first movie, I didn't like Loki nearly as much as I did in this one. Like I didn't think he was a bad character by any means, but I didn't think Loki was just like this amazing character like most people do because of Tom Hiddleston playing him so well. But I enjoyed him in Avengers, and in this, because it was less of him being evil Loki and it was more of him as captured Loki, I enjoyed that a lot more because it was like we get to see beyond just Loki being the trickster. We get to see Loki being human, and it was really cool to see him emotionally distraught because the one person he cared about was dead. And he couldn't really hold up that facade anymore once it came to him talking to Thor. So I really enjoyed that, and that's why I love Loki so much in this movie. But even without that, just the other stuff they did was just great. Like the action was good, the story was good, brought back like villains who were like centuries old, who were like basically in the stasis until they could come back again. And it was just really good, old versus new, and new got whooped up really bad in the beginning, and then they came back in the end because Thor wouldn't give up on the planet, and excuse me, of course wouldn't give up on James. So overall, great movie. Can't wait for the next Thor movie. And of course, I can't wait for the next Marvel movie, which I believe is Captain America, unless X-Men comes out first. I don't remember, but just excited for everything so far. And also love the Captain America reference, which was just really funny. But comment below, let me know what you guys thought of Thor. Favorite parts of the movie, least favorite parts of the movie. What you guys think if you saw both of the after credit scenes? Mostly the first after credit scene, they were like in between the credits, and then the after credits was when he came back, and that was like nothing special. But the first end credit scene, what did you guys think of that? And obviously, if you know about the collector and a lot more about the Marvel universe than I do, definitely comment below and let me know, let other people know. Try not to spoil it, but just if you can say like this person wants to do this, or tries to do this in some simple way where you don't spoil it for everyone, because even if you do, I think it'll be different considering how different the movies are from the actual comics, even though they follow the main story. All the stuff in between I feel like is completely different than how it plays out. But comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.